Okay, so just going to go over now the removal of the pulleys on the kitty bandsaw. That is the removal of the pulley on with the shaft still attached, because on the previous video I explained, or one of the previous videos I explained that trying to get them off the shaft was very difficult. In any case, it worked out very well to leave it on the shaft. So unless you do need to change the bearing, I would recommend you leave it on the shaft when it comes to changing the tyres. So the top pulley has got a cover on the back where the tensioning knobs are. Okay. This plate is held on by 4 screws, and they are above the pulley wheel and below the pulley wheel. Now I wondered, when I first saw it, I couldn't get to these screws because it was behind the pulley, and then I thought, well, how do you get to them? Well, it's obvious, isn't it, how to get to them? All you've got to do is turn this knob and it lowers the thing up and down. So there we are. It took me a while to work that one out for some reason. So get the pulley in the right position, and then you can get to all 4 screws. When you undo them, you will then find, if I can get round there, I've got a bit of light on the subject. There we are. You have to take this off, take that adjuster off completely, because otherwise it won't go through that slot. Pull that back, and that is the inside mechanism. Now, I know somebody was asking me, how does it work in there? Well, I didn't know. It's quite straightforward, as you can see. It's got a threaded bar there, goes into a thread on there, and that, as you can see, it pulls that plate up and down. The plate is held in position on slots with 4 bolts, and there's a little grease behind there to make it slide up and down. I should imagine you need to make sure that these bolts are done up correctly, because if you've got any slack in there, your pulley's going to start moving about when under tension. The shaft is held in this U-shaped piece of section there, so it can't go sideways. It's a tight fit sideways. However, you will see when I pull the pulley about, it will move up and down that way, and that of course is where the adjuster knob fits on there and pushes against the tension on the belt to get the right angle on that pulley and make sure it puts the blade on the edge of the top pulley and the edge of the bottom pulley if the pulleys are set up correctly. Now that shaft, I'll just take this knob off again, that shaft actually swivels, as you can see there, on a pin. Now you can see the pin there, which goes right the way through the shaft, through the box section there, or the U section, on the other side as well, and through the shaft through there, and it's got a couple of circlips on either side which stops it falling out. Okay, so you have to take those off, drift it out. They've provided a slot there to get a drift in there to knock it out, or the other way if that's what you want to do, and then you can then pull the shaft. The shaft then goes out with the pulley on the front. Obviously easy enough to put it back in again. So that's the top one. That's what it looks like. Okay, so that has to be put back together again. Now, as for the bottom pulley, it's slightly different. Well, depends what you mean. It's interesting because there isn't. It's the same. Looks the same in some ways, but of course it's got an adjustment on there to change the angles of that bottom pulley. So you see you've got the shaft comes through there, and it sits on in that hole, and these bolts adjust the shaft up and down or sideways. So difficult to sort of show you here, but if I were to put the shaft back in and show you this side, I've got to get the shaft out of the vise as well. There's the shaft. If I get the light on it. Now can you see this bit here, that sort of flange? Well, it's sort of I was going to say it's got a cone to it, but it's a sort of coned. It is sort of coned. And whereas the top one has a pin going through which it swivels on like that, this one swivels on this flange, on that conical flange. And if we look inside here, you can see that conical shape there? Well, that fits inside there and sits on that conical shape, so it has to be held back against that, and then the movement is really very small, but you can see you can go up and down, and you can also go sideways. It's such a small movement, but that movement is controlled by those 4 bolts on the back. Let's go back to that, and you'll see where it, hopefully we can try and do this one-handed. It's not easy. There, you can see now the shaft is in there. Can you see how it's moving up and down? Yeah, so it will move in all directions. Now it won't move very far. If I took those bolts out completely, yes, you would have a lot of movement. But in order so I get some sort of reference to get it back to where it was, I only undid these bolts by 1/4 of a turn each. So now I'm going to reassemble it and just turn those back 1/4 of a turn each until it's hopefully pretty much where it was. And then after that there's a washer that goes on there with a nut that locks it all in and holds it back against that flange on the other side. I've got a feeling actually I need to put the washer and the nut in first onto there before I actually tighten those up. There we are, I'll put the washer, there's the washer and the nut. So that, by tightening that up, that pulls that shaft against that conical flange which we were talking about on the other side. Right, it's very simple, but quite effective, and it remains to be seen how quickly I can set this thing up. But I do like the simplicity of it. We mustn't also forget to put the belt on. See, easy done.